This is Trash Talk with your host, Garrett the Trash Man.
What is up, everybody? I'm Garrett the Trash Man, and you are listening to Trash Talk. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And John, appreciate you being here, buddy.
Well, thank you. I am happy to be here. I love being here.
Did you kill it yesterday?
I did.
Just grab Black by the horns and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
All day.
So, my buddy said something the other day, and it made me laugh. I'm going to share that. He said, I never hit a woman, but I'd shake the shit out of one. In a joking way, but it was pretty funny. I laughed pretty hard when he had said that. I'd never hit a woman, but I'd shake the shit out of one. All right. So, anyway, Larson Waste, thank you for sponsoring this podcast. We're working our faces off over here. So, join the Larson Waste team. Hit us up if you're not a customer. Yeah, a lot of good things happening. So hit us up. Now, let's just roll right into it, dude. Let's just knock this out. So
Alrighty.
I'll rant first.
Okay.
And I'm going to jump on the train that everyone's talking and thinking about and just say Kobe Bryant was an incredible dude.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just too bad what happened to him and his daughter. But, man, what an inspiration he was. I'm not a huge basketball fan. I enjoy going to a game. I enjoy watching a game. But really, I am not big into players and or famous people in general. I just don't follow them all that much.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like 5 or 6 years ago I saw a video about Kobe Bryant and the work ethic he had. And so he was someone that I looked up to from then on. And yeah, just an inspirational dude, and I hope to live my life in a way that's inspirational. Where if I died tomorrow, I had a good friend. You probably knew him, Greg Bushman.
Yeah.
I remember leaving his funeral and just being inspired to live, not necessarily better, but just more on purpose, I guess is the best way to put it. Not that Greg didn't inspire me to live better, but just more on purpose. And
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant was one of those guys. And I want to live my life to where, Greg was a situation and Kobe that just went suddenly.
Yep.
Now, Kobe was significantly older and famous and all that, but I want to live my life to where if I died tomorrow, that people at my funeral, that's how they would leave, is inspired to live life more on purpose. And Kobe did that. So I want to say thank you to him in this podcast. And, yeah, I know it's everywhere, like you get on social media, and that's all you'll see, and that's incredible to have a whole country unite around a guy like that. Crosses all sorts of contextual walls that are built up, and he just crossed all of them, and I think it was incredible. So thank you Kobe Bryant, for how you lived and who you were. I obviously didn't know him personally, but what I did know of him, like, he was an inspiration to me. So
absolutely. I am a die-hard basketball fan. Like, ball is life to me. And I grew up watching him all the time, studying the way he played the game. And so, yeah, it's definitely a heartbreaker. I think probably the hardest part is he was with his kid.
Yeah.
Being a dad now, like, oh, man, gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
That'd be tough. But one thing that's cool is, like, you can go just about anywhere and say Mamba mentality, and people now know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
It means just, like, in your words, Garrett, you work your freaking face off.
Yeah.
Like, people understand, like, if you approach something with the Mamba mentality, like, just about everybody knows what that means, and if they don't, it means they lived under a freaking rock.
Yeah. Well, and take that to heart, because anything you do, if you approach it with that mentality, it's so much more fulfilling. And I don't care if it's doing the dishes or like building $1 billion company. It doesn't matter. Just approach it with that mentality, and you'll have so much more fulfillment in your life. Either approach it with that mentality or don't freaking do it. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. I was on a call this morning. I was trying to make my son happy and be on the call, and I'm like, I've got to stop one of these. I'm either going to be all in on this call or all in with my son right now. And man, living life that way is just so much more fulfilling. So I encourage everyone to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my rant. Thank you, Kobe.
Bada bing, bada boom. All right, so my rant is we've been having kind of what I do for a living in the home care industry, we've been having kind of an interesting situation where part of what we do is we do take care of people for the state, in the sense of we're contracted with the state, so they pay us to provide services to people.
Similar to like hospice care, I think it's called.
Yes.
My wife did that for a while, where she helped autistic or special needs kids, and the state paid her.
Yeah, very similar. So yeah, she was working with DDD, it sounds like. But basically, we've been having this one lady where she's a case manager, and so we work very closely with these case managers who when someone needs services and they're new to the program, they bring them to whatever company and da-da-da-da-da-da. And this one lady, she'd kind of not really been much on our radar. We really hadn't worked a ton with her, but we had kind of bailed her out a while ago. And all of a sudden, she just had this kind of influx of interesting situations where just different situations where people needed either a new provider or they needed a switch. And just from bailing her out in one very small and simple situation where water off a duck's back for us to do it, I mean, we just helped her out real quick, and kind of in another sense, did her a solid. And man, that has like paid off big time. I was like, she like rants and raves about how great we are now. And she's like, man, yeah, you just helped me out so much. Like, I really like to push people your way. I have to be unbiased towards everyone, obviously. But if they ask me, who closest to me can help me, you're obviously the closest one. And so I tell them that's the one who's closest and stuff. And, and just, it's been really interesting to see how, we showed up for her and really we didn't think much of it. We just did what we needed to do to help her out and help her solve her situation. And man, it has come back tenfold.
Yeah. I've said it on here before. Karma is a really good and practical business tactic.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, people act like it's not, but just do the right thing, and it's a good business tactic.
And that's just what I want to harp on is like doing good things. Sometimes, I mean, I hadn't talked to her, and I'm the one that deals with all of the case managers, and I hadn't heard from her for 6 months, and then since the beginning of the month, she's like, I mean, she's the most frequent person I've been talking to this whole month, and I've just been like, dang, where did this all come from, you know? So I just wanted to plug, like, hey, do good things, and good things will happen to you. You don't know the time frame. You don't know how, but karma will come back around and be good to you. It'll treat you nicely.
Love it. Speaking truth, John.
Mm-hmm.
All right, dude. It's a good rant.
I like it.
It's a good rant you gave there. All right, well, let's roll into this, and I may do a little explaining here because my lack of attention to detail when I send text messages many times has caused confusion for people that work around and with me. So I kind of want to introduce this a little bit, and so this will kind of be fresh. I'd sent that over to where you could have some thoughts on it, but I sent it in a way that didn't make any sense. But on this podcast, you guys may have heard, if you've listened to our past podcasts. If you haven't, go ahead and check them out. But I've talked about expectations and how, for me in my life, agreements have shown up and been so much more powerful when I have an expectation of someone instead of having an expectation. Creating an agreement with them is so much more powerful. It produces actually what I want to have in my life, and it generally is much more powerful for the other person. And there's a lot to it. Now, what I text you, John, is what do we do with external expectations, meaning expectations that people place on us? And how do we navigate and handle those? And my thought was just sharing some thoughts on that, because I found it personally in my life very liberating to clean those up.
Mm-hmm.
And as a leader, you can take responsibility for those expectations when you even anticipate that one might be there. Instead of just being like, well, I never agreed to that, so I'm just not going to do it. You can just go address it and clean it up. And one place where I've found this is really common in my life, and this is just my experience, but I found it to be very common in my life, that these expectations for me show up from other people that is in the church. And so when I refer to the church, I'm talking about the church that you and me are a part of, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And in this church, all the work that's done in the church, all the callings, the leadership,
all the
of
clergy,
that,
so other people can understand.
yeah, all the clergy is volunteer and done by the members. So we get called by leaders to be leaders or do other things. And what I found is so often there's certain things that I've agreed to, whether I accept an assignment to do something, and there's a plethora of other things that are just expected, or people will expect of me, and I found it, and that's just an easy thing where if you are a member of the church, probably easy to relate to. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're just expected to do certain things if something comes up, and so whether it's in that or in other parts of your life, I've just found it useful to, when I identify those and when I feel that I've got an expectation on me that I didn't agree to clean it up.
So how do you clean that up?
I just speak to it. So I'm trying to think of an example that maybe isn't in the church.
So clarify, speak to it, because are you sitting in a room by yourself and speaking to it, or
Yeah, no, go speak to the person that I feel that's coming from. So for example, let's say it is a situation at work that you've got agreements with your boss, and if your boss is someone that operates of expectations, like, I would encourage you to go and get clarity with him, because that's really all it is clarity of, like, hey, I want to understand, have some agreements of exactly what my job looks like. And for what I understand, it's this, 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 and this. And if that's there, then that's really clean. But if something else comes up and he's expecting you to do something, it's useful to clean that up. And it might be in the time, if he's like, hey, I need you to run this Saturday and I expect you to be there. It might be useful to do that in the time and then address it afterwards and be like, hey, listen, I want to have a discussion around this. If we need to make an agreement that I'll be available on Saturdays, let's talk about that. You may want to look at the compensation or certain things like that, or certain lead time of heads up, or certain things like that. Where if it's just expected, you start to be a victim in it. Expectations, I think, lots of times lead to victimhood mentality. It's like, oh, well, it's just what it's expected of me, and I can't do anything about it. But what I'm saying is, do something about it. Go talk to whoever it is that's carrying that expectation. Maybe some context that would be a little bit better would be like a spouse. And so let me give an as-lived situation. It's just flopped a little bit. Is I recognized when I would come home and see dishes in the sink, I was carrying an expectation that my wife would have the dishes done. And so my way of being with her would be affected when that expectation wasn't fulfilled. And she may or may not have had a sense of that, but it was really powerful to just go to her and say, hey, listen, I've recognized I've got this expectation. I want to clean it up with you. I would love to come home and have a house that's clean, and like, one thing that's important to me is not having dirty dishes. I don't like dirty dishes, and I realize, like, that's with me over here. Like, I can go do the dishes if that's what's done, and I don't know what that is for you, or how that would be for you, or if that's something you would want or be willing to do for me.
Yeah.
And just speaking to it like that, it just cleaned it all up, and we could live so much I don't know, I guess,
with a lack
freer.
of friction.
Yeah, lack of friction, lack of weight. And so it wasn't I come home and, like, I don't know what's going on over there, and she doesn't know what's going on over here, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's horrible. It was just like, and that's just one of a a million things, but as you go throughout your life, when you notice that those things come up, just clean them up. And I guess one example to do it the other way was I would show up and from work, and some days I would feel a lot of tension from my wife, like I had done something wrong. And so I could tell that there was an expectation there. And so we talked about it, okay, well, I just never know when you're going to come home. And like she had some expectations of certain times I would get home or what I would do if I wasn't going to be home at those certain times, and on and on and on. And we just cleaned it up and we set up an agreement. And it was like, all right, well, you can count on me being home at this time, and I will let you know as soon as that changes and do whatever I've got to do to clean that up. And if you don't release me from that agreement, well, then we'll go from that. And that has brought so much pressure off our marriage, because she's like, yeah, I know Garrett's going to be home on this time, and if I'm going to be 1 minute late from that, I give her a call and I'm like, hey, I'm late. Like, what do I need to do to clean this up? 90% of the time, it's like, okay, no, I'm good. Just thanks for letting me know.
Yep.
And so those would be some examples of when there's pressure there, and it just I've had such a good experience of cleaning those up, and I've done a few of those in this past week. I was recognizing and cleaning them up, that I just want to speak to that a little bit to just encourage people to go do that.
First off, it's funny that you say those things, because I can very much so relate to specifically some of the things you've just said. But one of the underlying things, as I'm sitting here listening to you, is, and I've spoken to this before too, but one thing, and I like to plug this, but a big part of what you've just been talking about is good, clear, and concise communication. Of communicating, and I really do like what you're saying here about not creating those expectations but agreements and getting on the same page. To be able to do that, you have to be able to communicate and to clearly and concisely say what you're saying openly so that they can understand you correctly.
And what gets in the way for me in that, and I think for most people, is the desire and the want to please those around you, please other people. And like I said, at least for me, because I want everyone to be happy. I want to, that's just a natural desire that us as humans have, because back when we were roaming around in herds, people didn't like you, got kicked out of the herds and you died. So you want, naturally we want people to like us, and we tell ourselves a story that they won't like us if we're not making them happy. But it turns out people like you more when you actually communicate openly, like you said. They maybe not even in the moment, but that's so much better than if we take a spouse, for example, then just shoving that down for years or months, and then it turns into an explosion. You're just on the roller coaster ride of being married, of good times and shoves things down, explosion, bad times, and then good times.
It's a vicious cycle.
It absolutely can be.
Absolutely. And I love that, because through good communication and creating an agreement, an understanding, getting on the same page, you can healthily get rid of your frustrations and actually feel like, okay, we have resolved this, and actually have a legitimate, usable, accomplishable is not a word. A way to accomplish it that's feasible, and you feel much comfortable in resolving and changing and bettering a relationship.
I love what you said about the change, because the change is something that I believe that agreements help so much on, because you know where you're at. And that doesn't mean you're stuck there forever, but you have a base of where you're at, so you can move from. So if I take the simple example of what time I'll be home, if I find that I'm having a very hard time keeping that agreement, I know where I'm at. It's super clear, and I can adjust that agreement. Say, hey, 6 o'clock does not seem to be working. I'm calling you every night and saying that's not going to work. Can we make a new agreement that I won't be home till 7? And when there's expectations, there's nothing to grab onto. There's no start point. But when you clean these things up in your life, there is the start point. So whether it's your job, whether it's responsibilities you may have with your church or your community, it's so much cleaner. And I found that. So if I go back to the church example, so many times in my life I've just said yes to whatever comes down the pipeline without getting clarity of what that actually looks like to be successful in it. And I've found so much more fulfillment in actually slowing myself down, slowing who's ever assigning me an assignment down, saying, what does success look like in this? If I say yes to this, what am I agreeing to? What would you have me be doing? And okay, we can work that out. Okay, yeah, and I can agree to that or not agree to that, or to portions and not portions. And I love, because most of the world just walks around asleep to these things. It's so fun to wake someone up to that when you're just like, oh yeah, you can count on me not being there for that. I never said I would, but you can count on, not that.
Yeah.
And people are like, what? Well, you're just supposed to say yes. Everyone says yes. And you're like, no. If I say yes to that, like, you'll have disappointment because I will not come through on that.
Yep.
And that's it's a powerful place to come from, and it may rock the boat for some people. And it doesn't mean you have to do it to upset someone, but being clear on that, like you said, with communication, not beating around the bush, not like, well, maybe it's sometimes I can, just, nope, you can count on that not happening for me.
Yeah. So I got a question for you because I have, in a way, tried to become much better in my business at communicating and coming up with agreements with people. How do you help someone be more consistent in keeping an agreement that they make with you? So say you communicate something, hey, we have an issue. You openly communicate with them and say, we need to fix this. And here's my side. Let me listen to your side. Okay. And you come to an agreement. You come up with a game plan of how to resolve this issue, of how to better the relationship and make it healthy. But then, as time goes on, they're not really living up to their agreement. Now, you can't control other people, but how can you help other people, like, keep their ends of agreements that you make with them?
Yeah. So I think of leadership when you say that, because I hold leadership to be producing, creating outcomes. And so you want to produce and create an outcome even though there's another person over there. And this, again, what plays into it, at least for me, can be a tough part of it, is that person over there, like, there may be hard conversations or perceived hard conversations, and I at times have a very hard time doing that. But what I have to remember is, while I'm making the agreement, part of the agreement is having a discussion of what is the consequence if the agreement is or isn't kept, and holding people accountable to exactness on an agreement is just as important as you keeping yourself accountable to exactness to the agreement. And so, like with employees, I have found that to at times be difficult, where if we lay out, I feel like it's very clear, and we then go address it because it wasn't kept in the way I understood. What I found for 90% of the time on my side is I wasn't as clear and as thorough in the agreement that I could have been. So that might look like I bring an employee and say, hey, this is what I understood the agreement to be, that you would do X, Y, and Z, that it would be done by this time, and that you would let me know it was done at this time. And it wasn't done. And it doesn't matter if it was supposed to be done at 6:30. It doesn't matter if it was done at 6:32 or done at 9, or they were never notified. Like, it wasn't done at the agreed upon time. And there's so much power in sticking to the exactness of that. And like I said, so often I find that there was something that wasn't understood in that, and then we can handle that. And then if it's not that, like I was saying with the starting point, there's so much cleanness in that to just be like, all right, so, like, do you see something I don't see? What I see is you didn't keep the agreement. And to me, big or small, I've got to work with people that stay in integrity, that do the things that they say they're going to do. Or at the least, when something happens, because life happens, I'm made aware of it as soon as the second you know you can't keep that agreement, you let me know. That's the only way I can have workability here. So if that's not going to happen, I wouldn't have us continue working together. because it's not going to be a good working relationship, and you can go with that. So, I mean, to answer your question, like I kind of did it as way of example to answer it, but I would say keeping the agreement with exactness, and then leaving the space of that there may be something that you didn't do correctly.
From the beginning, when forming the agreement.
Yeah. And what I found is there's been both where, like I said, lots of times there's something I missed in it. I was kind of sloppy in making the agreement, which is so useful to me because every time I do that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that it improves my communication and my ability to communicate. And so even that feedback is so valuable because then moving forward, I know with anybody I work with certain things to cover or not cover. And then if I do have someone over there that just can't be counted on to do what the things they say they're going to do, I don't want to be working with that person in any way.
Yeah.
So that's useful information. So
love it.
It's work. Honestly, that's how you work.
Yep.
And you just stay in it, and when it's hard to have those conversations, one, generally those conversations aren't that hard. You just make them hard in your mind before they happen. And two, even if they are hard, it's worth it for every party involved.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of times hard conversations are made so much easier when you just have the confidence that, through good communication, you can always come to an understanding.
And most time, if the intentions are clear, conversations that I think are going to be hard aren't.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, hey, this is all I'm here for is this right there. And like there's some stuff that happens. But like that's clear, the intention, then it's a breeze.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you always come to an exact agreement, but you'll come to an understanding.
Yeah, you may decide not to work together or whatever. It may not be your exact outcome, but yeah, you can at least get clarity on what you have over there. So, yeah, I love it, dude. You got anything more to add?
Really, one thing I did want to plug before we wrap it up is we have pretty clearly said this on the podcast, but I feel like we should say it one more time. We by no means, to everyone that's listening, know it all or have it all figured out. Really, this podcast is two young guys sharing their experiences, sharing what we're learning in our lives, and hoping that that's of value to you and helps you take the next steps towards your version of success in life.
Right. That's really why we don't plan out for 6 months what we're going to talk about, because I want it to be like, hey, what's going on in our lives right now?
Yeah.
Let's slow down, look at our lives, what's going on. Okay, is there something in there that we can speak to in our, like what we learned this last week?
Exactly.
And so sometimes that's why it's a little bit jumbled, because we're looking back and going, what did we learn?
And we have short attention spans.
Well, that happens. So yeah, I love that add-on. So appreciate you guys listening. Share the podcast. Hit me up, Garrett the Trash Man, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter,
everything.
Tickety talk.
Tickety talk.
Yeah, hit me up. Appreciate you guys listening. Peace.